where Robert Saleh says his defense is giving his offense some trouble in practice this week.
We're trying to simulate a 4-minute end of game situation and trying some new things. Again, credit to the defense because defense was playing pretty tight today.
It seemed like it was a bit of a rough practice for the offense. Just kind of what was happening from your assessment?
There's a top 5 defense on the other side.
How do you feel about how the rest of this practice went?
I felt real good about it. I think you need to have some practices where there's some mistakes that happen so you can coach them up. I mean, it's a coach's dream, that type of practice.
You know, the funny thing was, I think it was like last week, Rodgers was talking smack to the defense, saying that they were having really good outings against them. So that just keeps going back and forth. Adam, when you talk about the Jets defense, though, the first question, obviously the availability of Haason Reddick, who requested a trade earlier this month. Any sense of where things stand now?
Laura, it doesn't sound any closer right now, which is amazing. We're on August 20th right now. The Jets are still waiting for Haason Reddick to come in. They're going to be waiting for a while, it sounds like, because he doesn't plan to show up without a contract, and they don't plan to give him a contract until he shows up. So it's a game of chicken right now that nobody is winning. Nobody's coming out ahead. And while the Jets' defenses look great in camp, you could imagine how much more effective and stronger this defense would look with Haason Reddick rushing Brock Purdy on opening night in San Francisco. But right now, there hasn't been much progress from either side. And as long as there's no progress, the Jets will not have their standout pass rusher who's yet to take a down with this team.
Yeah, listen, when you talk about this Jets defense, they're going to be a top 5 defense because they have all pros littered on all 3 levels of their defense, where you talk about Quinnen Williams, you talk about C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams, Sauce Gardner. These are guys that have been playing at the highest level at their respective positions. But when you talk about Haason Reddick, that's when you talk about a closer. And that's when I think that's where you talk about the difference between a Jets defense as being a top 5 defense and possibly being the number 1 defense. Because the one thing that this Jets defense hasn't had since Robert Saleh's been there, they haven't been playing with a lead. And that's where Aaron Rodgers is going to be so pivotal for this Jets defense, is having an offense that can go out there and score points. And it's a totally different ball game. And RC, you know this, when you're out there and you're playing with a lead and your defense can go out there and play with its ears pinned back and get after the quarterback.
Well, I'll tell you what, their ears can't ever be peeled back. They got to peel their eyelids open. They was behind so dang much because they couldn't score points offensively. But also this team has to figure out how good they can be at safety. They lost Jordan Whitehead, who returned to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and now Tony Adams, who's going to be in his second year as a starter, as an undrafted free agent. You add Chuck Clark from the Baltimore Ravens, who was coming off of a knee injury. Can this be a position where they solidify the back end? We know what they can do at the corner position, and I believe that Quincy Williams is one of the more underrated players in this entire league. And at corner, along with the defensive end spot with Jermaine Johnson, they can make plays. Does Will McDonald step up if Haason Reddick doesn't sign with this team? Can you get something out of Michael Clemens, who is the backup defensive end? If you can't find a rusher to be opposite Jermaine Johnson, I believe that's an issue, along with not having veteran or having safeties who have played together for an amount of time that was any significant for the New York Jets.
Yeah, remember Bryce Huff also signing with the Eagles in free agency. He was a guy who had the most sacks for them last season. All right, depth is going to be an issue. We'll see how it all shakes out. But either way, they open the season up on Monday Night Football. Things kicking off September 9th for the Jets as Aaron Rodgers leads the team against the 49ers. 8 Eastern on ESPN, ABC, ESPN Deportes, and ESPN Plus. Peyton and Eli are back on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus with Monday Night Countdown. And RC, of course, at Levi Stadium, 6 Eastern. Now, speaking of the 49ers, they're on the other side of that game. Let's get Adam back in here for an update on Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco.
Well, Laura, moments ago, reporters asked Kyle Shanahan if anything was up with Brandon Ayuk, and his exact quote was, "Nothing's changed, status quo there." So, again, they continue to wait for Brandon Ayuk, who the team is attempting to re-sign, not having a lot of luck so far, but we are getting closer and closer to the regular season and entering a critical juncture here. And the same is true for the Dallas Cowboys and C.D. Lamb. I don't believe the two sides are terribly far apart, but yet here it is, August 20th, and C.D. Lamb still is not in camp as he's scheduled to be on that fifth-year option worth $18 million. Most people believe that these two sides will figure it out and get him in time for the regular season opener against the Cleveland Browns. but it still hasn't happened, and CD is still not in camp. And then Jamar Chase is in camp, but he has not practiced all summer. He's not said it publicly, but I think others realize it. He wants a new deal. He's got 2 years left in his contract. He is scheduled to make $1 million in base salary. And right now, the Bengals have downplayed the situation, saying that there's a plan, saying it's day-to-day. But the fact of the matter is, Chase still is not practicing. And as long as he's not out there, that's a big problem for this organization. We'll see if the two sides can come to some sort of agreement here in the coming days.
That urgency feels like it needs to come front and center for the Bengals. We're back on NFL Live, and we are getting defensive over here, okay? Let's start in Detroit. The Lions had one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL last season. They allowed 69 completions of at least 20 yards, which was the most in the NFL. They also ranked 31st in yards allowed per attempt at 7.8. And thank goodness we have RC here to make sense of all this. What did you make of that defense last year in Detroit?
They absolutely stunk on the back end.
This is like me trying to say that question.
This was a defense that couldn't make plays on the outside. So now you're at Carlton Davis from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If he can return close to his form when that team won the Super Bowl, they'll get a #1 corner. And Terrion Arnold, someone who is extremely versatile, can move inside, play the outside, understands defenses based on what he learned from Nick Saban at Alabama. And Amik Robinson, who started last year in Las Vegas at the outside corner position, who was also versatile enough to play the inside slot. I think this team can do a lot better job of stopping plays on the back end, and I believe they were already formidable in the front seven with some great young talent.
Let's go to Chicago next, where yesterday Mina Kimes showed some love to the Bears' defensive performance over the weekend. Take a listen.
If we were playing highlights of Caleb on offense, if we were to do it on defense, it would be Kyler Gordon, who really took over this game on defense for them when he was in. Their starting nickel, just flying around, making incredible open field tackles, blowing up screens. And to me, it was such a reminder that if we do talk about this Bears team being a playoff contender, it will be as much about Caleb. It'll be about this young defense.
You agree with Mina, RC?
I mean, leave it to Mina to bring up the UW corner, but she's absolutely right. Also on the outside with Jalen Johnson, a Pro Bowler, Tyreek Stevenson entering his second year. And what this team was able to be once they acquired Montez Sweat under Matt Eberflus defensively was absolutely phenomenal to close out the season. Add that to more talent on the offensive end. Caleb Williams looking like he's going to bring some of that OU, USC magic to Chicago. I think that this team can push for a playoff spot, even though they're in a very difficult division in the NFC North.